Welcome to the Faith Bible Church podcast. We hope the message you're about to hear is a blessing in your growth in Jesus Christ. We also pray that the message is not a substitute for your critical place in the local church and in community. Thanks again for joining us. I've shared with you several times that I have some favorite parts of the earth. A lot of those are in Texas. I'm a Texas boy. I grew up here. A lot of those are around the world, some of the favorite places that Liza and I have been. But there is no place I think is better than parts of the Holy Land. I happen to have been there half a dozen times or so. And I've told you many times that the Sea of Galilee is something really, really special and beautiful because when you're on the western side of the Sea of Galilee, where most of the cities and hotels are, you look out east over the sea, and it's very easy because there's nothing there except rocks and water. It's very easy to see in your heart and mind what it would have been like in the time of Jesus. It's just easy to see it. Not so in other places, but Jerusalem is high on my list of places. And my favorite thing to do is to actually walk the streets very slowly and quietly at night. When the local residents are there, when young couples are pushing strollers with their babies in them, most of the tourists are sleeping in hotels, and you just get to be in the city when it's calm, cool, and beautiful. I love that. I've gotten to do that many times, and it's one of my favorite things to do. I have a certain route into the city, and I follow along the outside of the ancient wall, and I go up into what was in the time of Jesus called the Upper Zion, or the Upper City, which is kind of up on the hill called Mount Zion, and then below it is the lower city of Zion, where David's palace, the king's palace, would have been, and other things. I walk along that wall now. When I go there, and if I would take a left through the Zion gate, you would enter into the old city, into the Christian quarter of the old city. But if you take a right there, if you were walking with me one day, if you just imagine that, you would go down a street that dead ends in a nondescript, rather ugly place that looks like this. This is during the day, of course, but you go down this street to the right. Instead of going left north into the Zion gate, you'd walk down this street and it ends right here. Doesn't look all that important, does it? On the right is a wall. On the other side of that wall is an abbey that's connected to a very, very large church that's behind this picture and to the right, called the Hagia Sion, or the Holy Zion. It is and has been there in many forms since the 4th century, all right? That's pretty old, like way older than America kind of old, right? And that is an abbey part of the church. Right in front of you at the end of the street behind the cars is a yeshiva. That's a training school for Jewish boys. On the left, behind the tree, is the building that I'm interested in. And if you were walking with me there, behind that you would see a statue of David playing the harp, because that's on the first floor is the tomb of King David. Kind of important, right? There is actually a stone thing in there that's covered in Hebrew. It says, David, King of Israel, alive and abiding. So there's this eternal quality to his kingship. He is the main king of Israel. We've recognized that. But what's cool about it is it's a multi-story building. You see it on the left behind the tree. First floor, Jewish area, Tomb of David. Second floor above it, you just see one of the windows. This is the upper room where Jesus and his disciples celebrated the Last Supper. Tradition is very, very strong. It's not 100% certain. We can't say A+, this is exactly the place, but it is really, really good tradition. In all of our ancient stories and many, many of our ancient maps, this general location and a house that looks just like this is identified, is specified as the upper room. It was celebrated for many, many centuries. If you were to go into that window on the second floor, it would look like this. It's rather surprising when you get inside of it, especially because of the pillars and the arches. That's because this room has been venerated and occupied for 2,000 years. It's been very special to various groups of people, okay? So there was a mosaic floor on it at one time. Now there's just a tile floor, either covering that or replacing those mosaics. The arches and pillars were placed in by Christian crusaders in the 12th century. And then in the 16th century, in the mid-1500s, Muslims came and took it over and made it into a mosque. And so you'll see the niche right in the center, a stone niche. That's a Muslim prayer niche that's facing Medina and Mecca. And then you'll notice there are two placards on the wall. There's a dark colored placard far left, and then just to the right of center, there's a placard on the wall. Both of those are written in Arabic. One of them commemorates the transition from a crusader church into a mosque. And you would even see the windows that are sort of hidden by the two pillars are stained glass written in Arabic. It's a very strange place. Because you walk in and you know that it's something special. It's got a very long history, but it has a crusader style and feel to it, and then there's Arabic everywhere. It's very, very interesting. And that is, of course, because since the first century, in the time of the early church, if indeed this is the spot, it has been remembered and venerated since that time. The Crusaders came and took it back over from the Turks, and they reinforced it, and then the Muslims came and took it over again, and they had a way of turning Christian holy sites into mosques. They wanted to cover up the imprint there, which is the reason why this is this. This is now, once again, a Christian site, and if you were able to go with us, we would walk in there, and it would be really, really beautiful. Perhaps, again, tradition is very good, that this is the location of the Last Supper. Again, this is a painting of the Last Supper. I think the context and background of this painting by James Tissot looks a lot like that room, which is the reason why it's one of my favorites. You can see Jesus in the center. You can carefully count, if you can see them, 12 men, 6 on one side, 6 on the other, because, hey, in the Renaissance, we like symmetry, okay? And so Da Vinci had 6 over here and 6 over here. Everybody does it the same way. And so Jesus is in the center. You can tell they're reclining on cushioned sedans. Either they would have laid on things like this or laid on cushions on the floor. All of their heads towards the center of the table. This is a Passover meal. This is what we celebrated, many of us hopefully celebrated last night with our Jewish brothers and sisters all around the world, the 15th day of Nisan on Passover. How many of you, by show of hands, got to celebrate the Passover with us last night? Fantastic. If you don't know exactly what I'm talking about, then I have good news for you. We celebrated a Passover last night because it was Passover, but all of you have an opportunity to do that anytime you choose this week, Passion Week. That video will still be on our website and on YouTube. It's a little over an hour long. You can pause it for the full meal. But everything you need to celebrate the Passover, if you didn't get to do it last night, you can do it this week. All on our website. The Haggadah and all of the instructions are there. So, here's what I'd like to do this morning. I'd like to go back to this moment in the Scriptures, right at the end of the meal that many of us celebrated last night. Jesus began a conversation with a specific number of disciples and almost assuredly a large group of women, at least half a dozen women that seemed to always be around Jesus' disciples. In the Scriptures, in a patriarchal, ancient Near Eastern context, men were identified as disciples, but there's always Mary Magdalene there, Mary and a third Mary, Joanna, probably several others. And so there's 5 or 6 or 7 women that always appear on the next level of the 12, and they seem to follow Jesus everywhere. And so I'm assuming that in this upper room, on this Passover evening, just hours before Jesus would be betrayed, there are 12 men at the beginning, at least, probably some servants and some women, and Jesus is in the middle doing much of what we did last night for our meal. But he starts a conversation at the end, at a very specific moment that I'd like to take a look at. It is called, in the Gospel of John, the Upper Room Discourse. And it's unique to John. Matthew, Mark, and Luke don't have it. John focuses on this conversation. He doesn't even talk about the Lord's Supper. This is my body, this is my blood. That's not in the Gospel of John. That's in Matthew, Mark, and Luke. And John says, hey, probably written after those three. Those guys covered the elements, the body and the blood. I'm going to cover what they didn't. I'm going to cover that conversation that Jesus had. So what I'd like to do is look at 5 short little snippets of that conversation that I've curated for our purposes today. So if you've got your Bibles, we'll be in John chapter 13. If you don't have a Bible, you want to turn your phone on or your iPad or something like that. If you're at home, open up a Bible app and turn to John 13. That's where we'll be. And here's the context. You see this picture. I want to imagine in your mind, Jesus knows what they haven't understood yet, that he's got hours with them. Hours. Just hours. At the end of chapter 14 of John, he says, get up, let us go from here. So chapter 15 and 16 and 17 seem to be on the road as they head to Gethsemane, the Garden of Gethsemane, which is through the ancient city, probably through the Temple Mount, through the Eastern Gate, down the Kidron Valley, up into the Garden of Gethsemane, where Judas rejoins them, betrays him with a kiss. The Romans take him. He's got hours with his best friends. What would you say? What would you focus on if you were Jesus, the eternal Son of God, and you had only hours left with your best friends? Now, of course, he's been preparing them for this moment for years. But now it comes down to the end. He knows what's about to happen. They don't know it yet. What would you say if you were him? Here's the context. We can see it clearly from the text. And I would encourage you to read, this week would be an incredible thing for you to do in Passion Week, is to read and reread John 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, the upper room discourse. To read that, to read it in full would be a blessing for you this week as we prepare for Good Friday and Resurrection Sunday. But the context is very clear. No time does he say, hey guys, I need you to believe in me. I need you to put your trust in me. In fact, chapter 14, he says something very different. He says, you have already believed in me and that the Father has sent me. So these are believers. And it's important to note that the only unbeliever in the group, the man who Jesus calls himself the son of perdition, the one that was destined for destruction, Judas has already left. He is gone. Jesus begins the conversation right as the door closes and Judas is left. He says, okay, now let's have a chat. He's talking to 11 men. All of them are believers, and probably a half a dozen women. And he says, now the Son of Man is glorified. And then he begins to go. So what would the context of this conversation be but this? Here's how I am going to put it. At this point, Jesus' mission becomes their mission. Jesus' mission is now their mission, and this is the context of his conversation. So let's look chapter 13, starting in verse 33. Just 2 verses in, Judas left in verse 30. So after receiving the morsel, he, that's Judas, if you got your Bible, went out immediately, and it was night. And then Jesus says, now the Son of Man is glorified, and the Father is glorifying him, and as the Father glorifies him, so the Father will be glorified. It's all happening right now. And then we get to verse 33. Little children, he says, teknia, he says, I am with you a little longer. You will seek me, and as I said to the Jews, now I also say to you, where I am going, you cannot come. A new commandment I give to you, that you love one another, even as I have loved you, that you also love one another. By this, all men will know that you are my disciples, if you have love one for another. Let me ask you a question. I want you to focus on this. Think with me. Why would Jesus say what he just said about love? Jesus talks about love a lot. But in this specific moment, in this specific context, with this transition of mission, this transfer of authority to the disciples, why does Jesus talk about love? First of all, he says, little children. This is a term of endearment. It's only used by John in the New Testament and once by Paul in Galatians. Only 8 times. A lot of them are in the mouth of Jesus. And this is a term of endearment. It's members of the family. So this is him specifying that these men and women are believers, I think. Judas is gone. Little children, I'm with you only a little while longer. He says, if he had a watch, I've got hours with you. Pay attention. This is really important. This is really important. I've told you what I'm already told the Jews. Where I am going, you cannot come. I'm headed to the cross. All of you will die as a martyr and a follower of Jesus in the future. But none of you, Jesus would have said, can go to the cross and die for the sins of the world like I am. None of you can do that. Only me. Only me, the eternal Son of God, can solve the divine problem that sin creates and cure it and accomplish satisfaction of the wrath of God so that you can be welcomed into his presence. That's what I'm about to do. And none of you can do that. No one else can do it, only me. So where I'm going, you cannot come, but I give you a new command. I need you to listen. Love one another. Can you imagine me say, James, pay attention. James, look over, John, brother. I need you guys to love Peter, Bartholomew, Thaddeus, the other Judas, the other James. Guys, ladies, I need you to love one another. Why would he say that in this context? He's not walking on the road around the Sea of Galilee and they have a spat. And he goes, guys, come on, get over it. You should love one another. Stop talking about who's going to be the greatest in the kingdom. You know, stop it. Love one another. Let's do this. That's not the context. So why does he say it here? There's nothing missing. Little children, I'm with you only a little while longer. I'm about to go. A new commandment I give you, love one another. Why does he say that? Because Jesus knows something. Jesus knows that division is a primary threat to the mission. He says, after this, it's going to get hard, friends. It's going to get really hard. And you are going to start looking at each other and blaming each other and inventing things. It was your fault. Why did you do that? Why did you run away? I didn't want to run away. And when you ran away, I ran away. And you started it. No, you started it. You denied him 3 times, Peter. Why did you do that? I wouldn't have done that. Well, you weren't there. You didn't see the pressure. This is a problem. Very real problem. And Jesus says, my mission is now your mission. And I need you to understand that division is a primary threat to what I've asked you to do, what I've called you to do. We often talk about how much God loves us. One of the spiritual mentors in my life has reminded me over the last couple of months, just as much as God loves you, it's important and true, you must also remember that the devil hates you. And he is laser focused on destroying you and taking you down. He hates family. He hates the church. He hates the gospel. He hates grace. He hates biblically moral and right children and parent relationships. He hates all of that. He is a liar and a murderer from the beginning. He steals and kills and destroys. And one of his main targets and schemes and strategies is division. Because when he can divide husband from wife, already half of it is won. When he can divide kids from parents, when he can divide this group like he did in Corinth, I am of Apollos, I am of Peter, I am of Paul, I am of Jesus. He can divide a church family, half of it's already won. Division is a main threat. Jesus saw it. That's why he says, listen, guys, agape love, this is God's kind of love, he says, agape love must be what you do, what you're committed to. And hey, don't you know that the last year and a half has given the church, universal, especially the church in America, including ours, a lot of opportunity for division, right? Blue and red, 45 and 46, is it vaccines or not? Is it masks or no masks? On and on and on and on. We've become people with very strong opinions, not right or wrong, but just different, in my opinion. And we've become, in many ways, entrenched in some of those opinions, and it has divided mothers from sons and wives from husbands and kids from family and best friends from best friends. And they start to talk about these issues and they realize, or they imagine in their mind, wait a second, you're on the other side of a very long chasm and I'm not sure how we can cross that. Jesus saw all that coming. in his day and in ours. And he said, guys, listen, ladies, listen. You must be committed to love. You must love one another. In the midst of a world that just wants to divide and destroy, when you stand tall as examples of love, all of the world will say, they follow Jesus. He knew it was coming, and he needed them to see it. Let's go to chapter 14, verse 1. Just a couple of verses down, chapter 14, first 6 verses. In the upper room discourse, Jesus continuing to talk. Do not let your hearts be troubled. Believe in God, believe also in me. In my Father's house are many dwelling places. If it were not so, I would have told you. For I go to prepare a place for you. If I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again and receive you to myself, that where I am, there you may be also. And you know the way where I am going. Thomas said to him, Lord, we do not know where you are going. How do we know the way? And Jesus said to him, I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father but through me. Again, think about the context of this conversation. This is not on a road traveling somewhere. This is not years before the cross. This is a moment, hours. Why would Jesus say this to his disciples? It's funny, he says, hey, you know where I'm going? And then Thomas is like, excuse me, not to like kill the mood, but I don't, like, could you clarify that? Because I don't think I know where you're headed. Like, could you draw me a map? Let it be clear. Just red outline, so we make sure we don't turn left when you turn right. I mean, that would be awkward, right? Everybody, you guys agree? I mean, would you let us know? And he says, no, it's not that way. That's not what I'm talking about. But every Jew, especially in the centuries after Jesus' time, every Jew would have read this very differently than we would, because this is chock full of wedding language. Very strange, right? Yes, wedding language. He says, do not let your hearts be troubled. Believe in God, believe also in me. In my Father's house, there are many rooms, dwelling places. This is all wedding pictures and illustrations for Jews. This is how it happened in Jesus' day. When a young man, a would-be groom, fell in love or had a short conversation or a glance of the eye with a woman that he fancied making his wife, or maybe it was arranged by fathers, said would-be groom would approach the father of the would-be bride with her in her presence, and he would engage a contract. This is a legal contract. There would be a very hefty price to be paid, often called the bride price or a dowry, these kinds of things. Now, that sounds a little difficult, and in times it could be in the ancient Near East, but this was not a disrespect to the father or the daughter. It was just a very ancient Near Eastern custom in a patriarchal and agrarian society. Families wanted to have boys for heirs in a patriarchal society, and because generally speaking, they're harder workers when you have to plow the field to put food on the table. Daughters were respected and protected, but in many times in their writings, they were considered a bit of a liability because they weren't heirs. Legally, if you only had daughters, your property and division inheritance could be separated among other male members of your extended family. It became very difficult. And so when a would-be groom approached a family, this bride price, this dowry, this sacrifice, and it is often an extremely enormous sum, would be a blessing to the family to take up the space of the daughter that he will now make his wife and make part of his family. And so this is a contract, they sign it, then all three of them, would-be groom, would-be bride, and the father, they would drink a cup of wine. Once that cup of wine was drank, it was a sealed deal. This was as good and as secure as a marriage itself, and this is what Mary and Joseph would have done. Before they even had the wedding ceremony or knew each other intimately, they were in this betrothal period, and it took a certificate of divorce to get out of that. This is a big deal. Immediately after the cup sits down, would-be husband runs back to his father's house. I know this sounds strange, but this is exactly what they did. Run back to his father's house, and began construction on a room, either a special room inside the house or an addition outside the house, above on the roof, whatever it was. And he would work on that room until the father said that it was complete. When the father who inspected his work said that it was complete, he was free to go back and get his bride. But not until he said it was complete, because if that guy was like me, he would have rushed it. A couple bricks here, a couple stones there, piece of wood, tarp. Is that good enough? Okay, I want to go get my wife, right? But no, he keeps working on it till the Father says that he is ready, that it's ready. This is why Jesus said, I don't even know the hour of my return, only the Father knows. See, it's wedding language. And we often say, wow, how can Jesus not know when he's coming back? Because he's preparing rooms. He's building rooms. And he's waiting for the Father to say, now it's ready. Now you can go back and get your bride. You're the bride. I'm the bride by faith in Jesus. He's the groom, and he's going to rush back and get us. Parable of the 10 virgins, we need to wait. We need to have our oil lamps trimmed and extra oil ready for him because we have no idea the hour that he's coming. It's all wedding language. So he says, I go to prepare a place for you. If it weren't so, I would have told you. But as it is, I go to prepare a place for you, and then I'm going to come back to take you where I am. And that's when Thomas says, I don't know where you're going. He says, I am the way. I am the truth. I am the life. No one comes to the Father except by me. If someone tells you, hey, come on, guys, calm down a little bit. It's God. It's all the same God. He's at the top of this mountain. This is the picture. And whatever route you take up, it's Islam or Judaism or Christianity or New Age or whatever, it's all fine. As long as you're getting to the top, you're getting to God. False. False. Untrue. A lie from the pit of hell. There is only one way to the Father, and it is in and through Jesus Christ, his Son. There's no other way. You can't go around him. You can't substitute him. It sounds exclusive until you understand that Jesus invites everyone. It's perfectly inclusive. The only condition is faith and trust in him. He says, I am the way. So what is he telling his disciples and us through them? This. The way to the Father is not a path, it's a relationship. So he's saying to the disciples, hey, after this, after I'm gone, I need you to know this thing is not a tightrope where you have to jump here and then do that and then climb up this set of stairs on your knees and go to this holy mountain and then go to that holy mountain and do this for 40 days and do this for 120 days. It's not some sort of formula path. The way to the Father is a relationship with me. You have to be hidden in me. This is what I need you to remember. This spills perfectly over into chapter 15 of the upper room discourse. I am the vine, you are the branches. My Father is the vine dresser. If you separate yourself from me, you can do nothing and bear no fruit. You must stay connected with me. Why? Because the way to the Father is not a list of to-dos. It's not a path, it's a relationship. They needed to understand that. They needed to see that. Chapter 14, verse 27. Let's keep going. Chapter 14, verse 27. Jesus says something beautiful. He says, peace I leave with you. My peace I give to you. Not as the world gives do I give to you. Do not let your heart be troubled, nor let it be fearful. You heard that I said to you, I go away and I will come to you. If you love me, you would have rejoiced because I go to the Father, for the Father's greater than I. Now I've told you before it happens, so that when it happens, you may believe. I will not speak much more with you, for the ruler of the world is coming, and he has nothing in me. He says, there is another ruler of the world. Since the fall and the curse, Satan is the ruler of this place, and he is about to do his very worst. He is about to show all of his cards. He is about to try to unleash his very, very worst. He doesn't know what I know, but the ruler of the world is coming, and I need you to understand. Don't let your hearts be troubled or be fearful. I leave peace with you, and my peace I give to you. The ruler of this world. Again, think of the context. Why would Jesus be saying this? The world has a different system. He says, look at the passage, Peace I leave with you. My peace I give to you. Not as the world gives, do I give to you. He said, hey, there's a worldly system, has nothing to do with me. And if you've noticed, if you've taken stock, then you know exactly what he's talking about. Think about if you were writing a Yelp review for the world system, for the promises of the devil. How would you do that? 5 stars, 4 stars, half star, what? I can tell you my review will be as low as possible because here's the experience of my 4.5 decades. Less than half of that in my own devices and 25, 26 years plus following after Jesus imperfectly, but still. I tell you this, all of the promises the devil has made have never come true. Have you noticed that? Just in your life, when he says, hey, trust me on this, trust me on this. This is going to feel good now, and it'll feel good then. Does that work out for you? No, it doesn't actually. He says, hey, no, trust me. You deserve this, and nobody's ever going to find out. False. Hey, you got to get what's coming. You got to get your own. You got to build it and hoard it and stack it up. Build a wall, build a castle. Has that worked for you? Because the truth is, when you do it that way, the castle crumbles in and crushes you. Everything that he has ever promised, he has failed to deliver. And yet we keep trying, and we keep trying. And we think, I may be the first one. I may be the first one, some of us may think, to make this sin not destroy me. I'll try it, but it doesn't work out. See, the world system is very different. And Jesus says, I have a different way of doing things. We could do it this way for the third person. Jesus is different. He gives a different peace, and he gives it differently. Because he gives it fully. He gives it to us by faith, and it's secure. He is the one who always fulfills his promises. And he says, listen, if the world is telling you this way is the right way, I'll tell you, I'm different. I'm over here. I want to give you a different peace, and I want to give it to you differently, and we want to head this way. This is the way of life and truth and safety and impact. All of those are lies. The ruler of the world, remember, he was a liar from the beginning. His first words are, did God really say? You think he's given up that strategy with you? Of course not. You hear him whisper, did God really say that to you? Did God really say that to you? Let's look at chapter 16, verse 1. Chapter 16, these things I have spoken to you so that you may be kept from stumbling. That Greek word is scandalizo, that you may be kept from falling into the scandal of sin. You may be kept from falling. They will make you outcasts from the synagogue, but an hour is coming for everyone who kills you to think that he's actually offering service to God. These things they will do because they have not known the Father or me. But these things I have spoken to you so that when their hour comes, you may remember that I told you of them. These things I did not say to you at the beginning because I was with you. But now I'm going to him who sent me. And none of you asked me, where are you going? But because I have said these things to you, sorrow has filled your heart. And Jesus knows what we know. Sorrow is a powerful thing. Sorrow and anxiety is a powerful thing. It drops us down into the worldly system. It has a way of inviting us downstairs. Hey, this is heavy, right? This is heavy. You feeling heavy? I know this is very anxious, lots of stress, lots of burden. You feel that on your shoulders? Just walk downstairs with me. Just walk downstairs with me. There's another way of doing this. You see, Jesus knew they were going to have trouble. He says they're going to make you outcasts from the synagogue. They're going to try to kill you and think that it's a service to God. I need you to hear Jesus' words translated. This is what he would say. The trouble of the world will entice you to respond in a worldly way. The sorrow and anxiety that you experience in this world, there will feel like there's a right response. Anger, revenge, selfishness, pride, my own form of justice. I'll get it. He says, no, that's the worldly way. It's not my way. It's not my way. I want you to experience peace, not shame and worry. I want you to experience trust, not control. I want you to experience love, not anger and pride. I have a very different way. The world will entice you. It will entice you. It will entice you. There's a worldly way of doing things. Let's try it out. And Jesus says, no. I've told you these things. I know that sorrow has filled your heart, but there's a different way of doing it. Let's end with the last passage, only 2 verses, because I want to respond in worship. Chapter 16, verses 32 and 33. Chapter 16, verses 32 and 33. Jesus says again, behold, an hour is coming and already has come for you to be scattered, each to your own home, and to leave me alone, and yet I will not be alone because the Father is with me. Verse 33, these things I have spoken to you so that in me you may have peace. This is a purpose statement. You should pay attention. These things, he's talking about the whole speech. The next chapter, he's going to begin praying to the Father. These things I have spoken to you so that in me you may have peace. In the world you will have tribulation, but take courage. If it ended there, it would just be wishful thinking. A sort of attaboy, go get him. Hey, I know you're going to have trouble, but let's meet this with some courage. Like, act the man, play the part. But that's not where it ends. In this world, you would experience great suffering and affliction and tribulation and trial, things that are unjust and wrong because the devil hates you and he's out to destroy you. But take courage. Why? Because I have overcome the world. We need to hear Jesus, that all of the victories that we experience are simply effects of his great victory. We are called overcomers in the book of Revelation because we are found in the capital O, overcomer. We are found in Jesus. And all of the beauty and victory that we experience simply lie in the shadow of the cross, of all that he has done for us, all that he has accomplished. In Genesis chapter 3, the great first gospel is given by God. Seed of the woman, a single male individual from you will crush the serpent of old, the Satan, the accuser, the devil. And the serpent will strike him on the heel, crush him on the heel. They will both kill each other. Well, which one happened first? Well, Satan did his worst this Passion Week, and he killed the one who has come to redeem us. He showed all his cards, he played all his hand, but he didn't count on the resurrection. And so 3 days later, something happened. And now Satan knows that his time is limited. And since he struck the first death blow, the next one is yet to come. And he will crush the serpent on the head. He says, I have already overcome. It's done. It's finished. It's just simply a clock of time based on my grace, because I want none to perish, but for all to come to everlasting life. All of our victories are an effect of Jesus' great victory. So here's the big idea. We said at the beginning that Jesus is speaking to his disciples in this moment because his mission was now their mission. Well, of course, it's only one step further for us, and it's true. Jesus' mission is now our mission. And all of these words are perfectly relevant for us. And we must remember and celebrate and live them out in this week of all weeks.